My name is Samantha Jackson. I'm with the Education USA portfolio team here in Melbourne. I'm located at the US Consulate. Thank you for being here tonight. To those that are joining us virtually from around the region, welcome to you as well tonight. It's going to be an informative session where I'm sure it's going to be incredibly helpful in regards to your desire and your goals to head to US opportunity that you're going to learn directly from admissions counsellors that are here from not only New York, but also from Abu Dhabi, and they're both at NYU institutions. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to them. We'll lead through the presentation for the next hour or so, and then we'll lead it into Q&A. And it's with absolute pleasure that I'm going to kick it off with Annie firstly. So Annie, welcome to the podium. Welcome to Melbourne, and it's a pleasure to introduce you to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and thank you for having me. This is my first time in Australia, so I'm excited to be here. And I've been working at NYU for 9 years now, and being in the virtual space for the past 2 years and not being able to meet with students and families like you has been really hard. So it's really exciting for us to be back in person and to be able to chat with you about NYU and US education opportunities. So just a little bit about us. So I'm on the left. My name is Annie Wilson. Not only do I work at NYU, but I also went to NYU as an undergrad and a graduate student, so I can speak to my experience. You're going to hear from my colleague Sal, who you see on the right here in just a moment, who works for our campus in Abu Dhabi. So we're really approaching this from different perspectives when it comes to NYU and thinking about how you can study across the world with our institution, but still get that US education. So in terms of what we'll be talking about today, I'll give you a brief NYU overview so you understand who we are as a university, a little bit about our mission, our identity. We're then going to talk about the US application process. And I know that it's very different than the application process that you have here for Australian universities. So hopefully we can break down some of those barriers and demystify the process a little bit so you know what we're looking for and how you can best position yourself in that process. Then we're going to talk about those global opportunities at NYU. So we're going to talk about our campus in New York City, our campus in Abu Dhabi, and our campus in Shanghai. And as Samantha mentioned, we will definitely leave time for questions at the end because I'm sure you will have many of them. So to start off in talking a little bit who NYU is as a university. So if I had to define NYU, I would say two things that really define us are that we are urban and we are global. So we are in big cities and we are also around the world. We want our students to graduate not just being educated in their academic area, but also be global citizens. Our world is growing smaller in terms of how interconnected we are, so to be successful in the world, students really need to understand how to navigate difference, how to navigate culture, how to navigate these different boundaries that we have. So NYU really approaches education in that way. How do we create a global citizen and a global community? And part of that is experiential learning in big cities around the world. How are you applying what you're learning in the classroom outside of the classroom? So you see up here on this slide a map of all of our campuses around the world, and we highlight 3 of them: New York City, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. And you're going to hear us mention those 3 campuses a lot. That is where students can get their NYU degree. So we are called New York University, but we don't just exist in New York. So when students are considering NYU, one of the first questions they have to ask themselves is, where do I see myself studying in the world and getting that US NYU degree? So it's really about the context in which you want to study. So one of those campuses will act as your home for the majority of your 4 years at NYU. But we do have a lot of movement around those 3 campuses and the other campuses that you see listed around the globe. We are currently on 6 out of the 7 continents. We have not made it to Antarctica yet, but who knows, maybe someday in the future. But we really want our students to be able to move around the globe seamlessly and learn about their academic area in a different context. So all of the campuses that you see in white are still NYU campuses, but on a smaller scale. We call them global academic centers. They are not built for students to spend 4 years and get their degree. They are built for students to study away for a semester or for a year. But because they are NYU campuses, while you're there, you're taking your classes you need to graduate with NYU faculty members, so you don't have to worry about credits transferring over. And we'll talk a little bit more about financial aid later and how we support students financially. But whatever financial support a student is getting at NYU, that actually follows them around this network of campuses. So again, it is really seamless to get that global experience. You'll notice here that we do have a campus in Sydney, so if you do come to NYU, you can come back home and study away at NYU Sydney for a semester or a year, or any of the other campuses that you see here. So it's really about students creating that own pathway for themselves and thinking about what they want their education to look like in a global capacity. Something that is true across all of our campuses is that NYU really likes to take students outside of their comfort zone. And that's because when you are outside of your comfort zone, that is when you are learning, that is when you're growing, that's when you're challenging yourself, your beliefs, what you know about the world, and meeting other people who are going to help you to form your education. So we do so in a lot of different ways. First is having all of these global campuses, right, and maybe taking you out of your comfort zone where you grew up. Other ways is putting you in these big cities and having you navigate not only life as a college student, but navigating real life in these big cities as well. Most of our campuses take advantage of being in a city and being part of an urban environment. So that means when our students step outside of their academic building or their residence hall in New York City, they are in the middle of Manhattan or downtown Brooklyn, and really excited about that vibrancy and how it adds to their education. So there's a concept of using your city as a classroom and really having that experiential learning be part of the NYU experience. So that is a very broad, higher level overview of NYU. If you take away anything about the university, it really should be urban and global. That's what really defines us. Before we dive into some more details about the university, though, we do want to talk about the application process and really break down what we're looking for at US institutions and how you can be successful in the application process. So I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Sal, and you'll hear from me again a little bit later.
All right, so again, thank you all so much for being here. So in terms of the application process itself, what we recommend for all students to do, even with their families, is to really do your research and really find out what truly matters to you. So when we talk about looking and researching for, we have what, 4,000 institutions, US institutions on the Common Application. So you really, to narrow those down is gonna take a lot of work. One of which is what kind of academic programs are on offer? Where is the campus located? So as Annie mentioned, we do have 3 degree granting campuses within NYU. So which one would be your primary campus of interest or secondary campus of interest, if that is applicable to you? What is the general school or class size? And we will talk a little bit more about how New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai campuses kind of differ from one another in terms of class size, but find out also what matters to you in that regard, the kind of faculty, the research that's done in that city, in that campus, and the community and student life, and what that city actually presents, because all cities are essentially unique. So when we talk about this, we don't talk about only NYU, but when you do your research in other US institutions, it's also about where they're located within the city. And then the kind of career development opportunities that you will get with that institution. What kind of support services do they have? Do they help you secure internships? Do they help you secure employment, hopefully post-graduation? So looking at those numbers can really be helpful. And last but not least is obviously looking at the tuition costs or the cost of attendance, as well as the financial aid kind of offerings that happen within each institution. So we will go through what this kind of means when you're talking about NYU, but these are the kind of general research questions you should be asking yourself when you're trying to narrow down a US institution for study. So first things first, we want to tackle the academic calendar. We know that we are coming in from spring for us, which I know is fall for you, but in Abu Dhabi, it's either hot or not hot. So there's no, so we'll just stick to the regular terms of the academic calendar. So we have our fall term, winter break, spring term, and summer. And as you can see, they're broken down in these months throughout the year. The reason why this is particularly important is because of the application deadlines and where they fall within your academic calendar, specifically to Australia. So in these application deadlines, we will go through what the application deadlines are. We actually have 3, so we will break them down for you. But this is key so that you understand when our application opens, when it closes, and when you receive your decision so that you're able to kind of make those decisions earlier on. Did you want to add, Annie? Sorry, did you want to add? Okay. All right, so in terms of deadlines, this would be the application. These are the application deadlines. So we have early decision 1, early decision 2, and regular decision. The main difference between early decision and regular decision, early decision is more of a binding agreement. And what that means is if you apply as early decision 1 or 2, you are telling us as NYU that we are your top choice. And if you are offered admission by NYU, you will attend in the following academic year that you have applied for. Obviously, there are some caveats to that when it comes to financial aid, but that is what essentially early decision and regular decision means. Regular decision is essentially what you think it is. It's regular, and so you can apply to multiple institutions, and you're kind of giving yourself that choice and flexibility to say, okay, well, if I'm offered more than 2 spots, then I can pick which one it is. Whereas for early decision, you'll have to withdraw the rest of your applications and commit to NYU. So these are the notification dates as well. And I would like to mention that the one that probably aligns best with the Australian academic calendar is early decision 1, because you will receive then your notification date before the end of the year, and that would be at the end of your year 12 essentially, which would be a good time to apply. So these are some parts of the common application that are really important that we wanted to kind of demystify a little bit. And we've broken them down into what essentially your school is really responsible for and what you are responsible for as the applicant. The first part is the letter of recommendation. For NYU, we only require 1 letter of recommendation, and that needs to be from really any person who is in a position of authority in your life. That could be, that could be a supervisor you had in a part-time job or a volunteering gig. It could be a coach that you're really close to. It could be a teacher. It doesn't have to essentially be your career counselor, so to speak. So just a 1 letter of recommendation. Your transcripts for year 9 through 12, plus your ATAR predictions. So that ATAR will essentially satisfy our testing. What that means is that you do not need to do or submit an SAT score, and you do not need to do an SAT or ACT or any of that. So because your ATAR will have completed that and satisfied that requirement. We do have 100 or plus more different kinds of exams that we do look that we will fulfill also that requirement. Finally is the school report and the school profile. What that does is it gives us context as to what kind of curriculum you're in, but not only that, it's also about the rigor of your curriculum, the classes that are kind of offered, and what that looks like and what grading looks like also in that school. So that gives us context when we read your application. The part that you are responsible for as an applicant is your self-reported academic record, which was something introduced a couple of years ago. That is simply a way for you to self-report whatever is on your transcript so that when we receive it, we have a standardized view of what that looks like because we receive transcripts from everywhere. So that is one way that can help us kind of expedite the review process, and then you will fill it exactly as it shows on your transcript. You don't need to convert it to US model or kind of like US grading. You just need to do it exactly as it appears, and then we'll receive it in the way that we'd like to look at it. Secondly is a personal statement. So that wouldn't be like an academic essay or academic paper. This is really truly who you are. This is where is basically my and Annie's favorite part of reading the application, because we really get to learn about the applicant as an individual. Who are you outside of the academic transcripts? We've seen the transcripts, we've seen the extracurricular activities, which we're gonna go into next. And so who you are will be a really big way to kind of round that out for us as well. And the supplement essay is optional. And when we say optional, we really mean optional. You will not be disadvantaged if you do not fill out that supplemental essay for us. Finally, you have audition and portfolio. This is specifically to programs that you're applying to in New York, where they are like the Tisch School of Arts, like acting audition or an arts portfolio that you need to submit. That will be specific to NYU New York that you would have to submit that. So this is just a screenshot of what the Common App looks like in terms of the components that you see here. These are just general information that you would need to do. One thing I would like to note here is, actually not one thing I'd like to note, but one thing I'd like to ask is that everybody who is in year 12, just open up an account if you haven't already. You can open an account and just explore it, and then, you know, that'll be a great way to kind of get acclimated to the Common App if you haven't already made an account. So in terms of activities, what we look for, because a lot of the times we get the question of, so extracurriculars, what does that really mean? So for example, where I'm from in the UAE, extracurriculars, what does that mean? It's not a big culture on essentially kind of do something outside of your academics and that will be related to your academics. It's more, no, this is fun and this is academics. And so we recognize that, and we recognize that there are different ways to report those extracurricular activities. So we really listed examples of that. So it's not just limited to school-based or clubs, school-based organizations. It's sports that you're doing within school or outside of school. It's volunteer work that you may be taken up, or a part-time job or internship. And finally, some families have, or some applicants actually have, significant family responsibilities they undertake that takes up a lot of their time. That is actually considered a way that you are showing us your commitment and the impact that you're having when sustaining that commitment in that particular activity. So really expand your kind of idea and open your mind to what an extracurricular activity is. In regards to essay topics, when we say, oh, like we want to know who you are. I know it sounds very flowery. It's like, oh, who am I? But really, honestly, it is just, these are really great prompts within the Common App. You will have to pick one of these essentially and then write about it. So there are some that are talking about identity, or some that would be talking about challenges that you've overcome and how, or potentially just discussing a topic that you're pretty passionate about. I've gotten applications I've read where it's all about the love of music and how they've discovered their love for music, and then what has that taught them about themselves. So there are many ways that you can kind of take that from these essay topics, but that's what we're looking for in the personal statement. And then one of the very helpful, beneficial things within our website is something called the International Qualifications Tool. So again, if you also walk away and be like, what did Sal say? Because that happens. You can also go look at our International Qualifications Tool and kind of select the country in which you are studying. So in this case, Australia. And then figure out what are the qualifications. And it'll show you what qualifications you actually need in order to apply or be eligible to apply. So that's just a screenshot of what that is. And we did cover a little bit of 4 years of transcripts with ATAR prediction. So in terms of financial aid, there is also a very handy net price calculator that actually will estimate your cost of attendance based on the information you provide to the calculator itself. And so what I would like to talk about in terms of financial aid is also deadlines. So deadlines are very important, and the earlier you start working on the CSS profile, which is what you need to submit to our financial aid office, the better it will be so that you can actually receive a financial aid offer. So the deadlines are typically 2 weeks after. However, when you do receive your admissions decision, you do receive your financial aid offer as well, so that you're making an informed decision on whether you're going to commit to NYU. Some questions or some things that come up with financial aid. I've mentioned something called the CSS profile. That is essentially a form that you fill with a parent, legal guardian, a person who essentially will know all the financials of the family. You will fill out that form, and that will go to our financial aid office for financial aid consideration. And we meet demonstrated need. What that means is we will meet that sort of gap of where there is between your family contribution and the tuition fee. So that's what we aim to do for all of our students. The financial aid package is also renewable, meaning you only apply for the CSS profile, and then whatever you have received in your first year will be what you receive for the consecutive years. It is not something that we will need to reevaluate, essentially. Yes, and then deadlines are important. And I said that twice because deadlines are important. Okay, so I'm going to invite Annie back up here to talk a little bit more about our NYU campuses of Abu Dhabi, New York, and Shanghai.
Awesome. Thanks, Elle. So hopefully you have a little bit of a better understanding of the NYU application process, kind of the U.S. application process. I will say a lot of what we talked about is NYU specific. So what's important when you're applying to U.S. institutions is to know specifically what that institution is looking for, right? So we are very flexible in accepting the ATAR, predicted or final results. There might be some U.S. institutions that do require that you submit an SAT score. So it's really important that you understand which institutions that you're applying to and what their specific requirements are, because it could look different. The NYU experience now. But I want to pull it back a little bit to talk about NYU in the context of U.S. education, because a hallmark of a U.S. education is a liberal arts curriculum. And basically what this means is we want students to have looking at all of those core areas like math, science, English, history, and giving them the ability to explore before they commit to an academic major. So we really give you that opportunity to see what is out there in terms of academic options before you commit to something and move forward with getting education, is having that liberal arts foundation. And that is part of the core at NYU across New York, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai. So students do have a sequence of classes that they need to take in order to graduate. And that is true if you are an engineering student, or if you are a film student, or if you are a philosophy student. That way you graduate with that well-rounded understanding of academic areas, and then you really get to hone in on your area of expertise. So that's really something that defines the U.S. education system. But of course, we know that all of you will ultimately have a major in something that you are specifically studying when you're at university. Now, something that is exciting but maybe intimidating about NYU is we have over 230 majors to choose from. So we have a lot of options for students, and they really run the gamut across different academic areas. Now, a way to start navigating those options is doing the research that Sal was talking about earlier. So if you go to our website, we actually organize all of our 230 areas of study into academic disciplines. So you can click on the business bucket here and see all of the business options that we have at the university across all of our campuses. Same goes for arts and media, for STEM. So this is a really great way to start that research. I know I have this interest in an academic area, but what does that look like at NYU? So I would definitely recommend starting here so you can see what your academic options look like. Another hallmark of a U.S. education is not just academics, but also educating the entire person. So obviously academics are important, that's why we're going to university, but we also pay close attention to creating community on campus, helping you develop your passions and your skills, which is why we look at all of those different pieces of the application, right? You're thinking, why are my extracurricular activities important? That's because we want to know what you're passionate about. We want to know the impact you're having. Are you going to have that same impact on our campus? Are you going to be involved in the community? So we really look at all of the different ways that you can engage with campus outside of academics as well. And we do offer a lot of student support in that regard. So I talked about taking students outside of their comfort zones. We still want to do that because we want you to learn and grow. But in order to thrive, you do need support and resources along the way. So all of our campuses do have a welcome orientation. And for many of you, this will be your first time leaving home, your first time going to university, living in the States, living in China, living in the UAE, and we recognize that. We want to make sure that you feel equipped with the skills to be successful. So our welcome orientation is kind of twofold. It is getting you acclimated to being a college student, being at NYU, but also acclimated to the city in which you're living. So that's when you're going to have academic orientation, when you learn more about your program and the classes that you're going to be taking. But we also have fun events on campus. In New York City, we have different events throughout New York City, whether that is a picnic in Washington Square Park where our campus is, or we have Drag Bingo, which is bingo hosted by one of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race. So you can meet students who share similar interests to you and then also explore the city altogether. So you're forming that sense of community before you start taking your classes and really get a sense of, okay, this is the city, this is the school, and this is where I can fit in. So welcome is really important, and again, that happens across all 3 campuses. We also have a student affairs office on all 3 campuses, which is thinking about forming community, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a moment, but what types of clubs and organizations do we need to support our student interests? How do we create an inclusive environment? We also have a student health center, which addresses all health needs, both physical and mental health, including our wellness exchange, which offers counseling services for students. We know in particular the past few years have been very difficult with the pandemic and continue to be, so we really have a lot of resources for our students to help them with mental health while they're a college student. We also have our Moses Center for Student Accessibility, so if you have any accessibility concerns while you're at the university, we can provide accommodations and support. So a lot of support along the way for all students, but in particular for international students as well. So at NYU, we actually have the largest international student population of any college or university in the United States. So we have a very globally diverse student body in addition to having our campuses around the world. And part of that is acknowledging we want to make sure that you have the resources and support to be successful. So we do have visa and immigration support, so you're not doing that process on your own. If you're admitted to NYU and you need to go through the visa process, we actually have an office that helps you go through that. We also have on-campus and off-campus employment options. We get a lot of questions from international students about whether or not they'll be able to work while they're at NYU, and the answer is yes. We are very well versed in helping international students to navigate that process. All of our campuses have a career development center to help you to find a job on or off campus or an internship if you're looking for professional experience. In addition, we have other international student support, so we promote cross-cultural dialogue. A reason we're bringing students from around the world together is so you can learn from one another, so we create a lot of spaces for that inside the classroom and outside of the classroom. During welcome, we have international student welcome. In New York City, that is put on by our International Student Center, which is actually a physical space that we have on campus for our international students. We have a global buddy system, and then also alumni networking. We have over 500,000 alumni around the globe, including alumni who are here in Australia. So we make sure that you are connected wherever you choose to go after NYU, and that you have resources through NYU around the world. In terms of clubs and organizations, we have a lot of ways that you can remain involved at the university, and we want you to be involved on campus outside of the classroom. How many of you are currently athletes? All right, and I'm sure some of you at home watching from your Zoom screen are also raising your hand. So you can continue athletics at NYU. In New York City, we are Division III for the NCAA. Division III focuses on a balance of academics and athletics, so it's really intentional about finding that balance. If you didn't want to compete in the varsity sport level, we have intramural and college sports in New York City, Abu Dhabi, and Shanghai, so you can still participate in athletics across the network. We do have over 300 clubs and organizations, or in Abu Dhabi, they're called student interest groups. And these are changing all the time as student interests are changing. We really want to respond to our community. We have student government opportunities if you want to be a leader. We have things like mock trial, Model UN. We have a huge community service presence on campus. A lot of our students are dedicated to giving back. We have some clubs and organizations that are focused on different academic areas. We have some that are just based in fun and student interests. One of my favorites is the Cheese Club, where we have a group of students in New York City who have a budget to try out different cheeses together because that is what they're passionate about. So you can have a very serious organization that you're part of, or just something to form that community informally outside of the classroom. So we make sure that we have these spaces where students feel supported. We also have our Center for Multicultural Education and Programs on campus that has a lot of communities based around student identities. So we want to make sure that you have that space where you can connect with students outside of the classroom. We also have something called an open arts curriculum. So if you are interested in acting, in dancing, in singing, but not majoring in that, there are still opportunities for you to take those classes as a student or be involved outside of the classroom. In New York City, we do have a theater on campus that is the largest theater south of 42nd Street where Broadway is, and we have both student and professional performances there. And some of the students who are performing there are part of our artistic programs, and some of them are engineers. So there's a lot of opportunities for artistic growth and performance. And then we also have excursions and support for exploration of art and culture. We are in these big cities around the world that have access to some of the best art and culture. So we want to make sure that you can experience that as a student. Something that's pretty common across our campuses is being able to get into most of the museums in that city for free with your NYU ID card. So if you are taking an art history class, you are going to the Metropolitan Museum of Art or the Louvre in Abu Dhabi to see that piece of art in person, right? So that's that element of experiential learning, and we want to make sure that you have access to that on a student budget. All right, so that is true of the entire global network, everything that I've talked about, but I now want to drill down into our 3 degree granting campuses. Because you saw the common application earlier, right? All the general information that you're filling out, but then once you add NYU as one of your schools, we ask you some specific questions about our university. And one of the first questions we ask you is which campus or campuses are you interested in? New York, Abu Dhabi, Shanghai, 1, 2, or all 3. If you're interested in more than one, you then get to rank them in the order of your preference. Now, to know which campus is your preference, you need to know a little bit about them because at the core, they're all NYU. They all offer an NYU degree, but the experience of getting there looks a little bit different. And part of that is the context in which you're studying. So I'll start by talking about our New York City campus. If you didn't know, that is our original campus since we are New York University, but it also is our largest campus. We have about 25,000 undergraduate students and about 20,000 graduate students on top of that. Like I said, we do have the largest international student population of any college or university in the country. That represents just about a quarter of the 25,000 students that we have. And across that international student population, there are over 135 different countries represented. So even for our students who are not leaving the New York City campus to study away, they're still having those meaningful global conversations in the classroom. And really, New York City is an international city in and of itself, so we do reflect that in our campus. Now, even though we are a large campus with 25,000 students, our average class size is only about 30 students. One of the ways that we're able to do that is we break down that larger student body into 10 schools and colleges. And you see those all listed here. So this is how we organize our academic majors at the university. Now, the site that I showed you earlier is the best way to start your research because sometimes it's not clear from the name of the school what majors that school oversees. So once you look at your academic area of interest, you'll see the different options that you have across these schools and colleges. Why it's important to know about this school-college structure is that if you do indicate an interest in New York City as your campus of interest, you do have to indicate that you're interested in one of these schools or colleges for your degree. We do have undecided options if you are unclear about what you want to study, so you don't have to commit to something right away. But we do have the opportunity for students to say, yes, I'm interested in business. I'm going to apply to the Stern School of Business. Or yes, I want to be a social worker. I'm going to apply to the Silver School of Social Work. So this is where our 230 majors live at the university. So just to give you a sense, I won't go through all of them, but first is our College of Arts and Science. That's our largest school at the New York City campus. It has over 60 liberal arts majors, anything from journalism, politics, to physics, psychology, sociology, and that is where we have the most flexibility. So students can apply to that school undecided and don't have to declare their major until the end of their second year. So you have 60 majors to choose from in that school. The next school you see listed is the Gallatin School of Individualized Study. This is probably one of the more unique things about NYU academically. This school actually allows students to create their own major. And they do so by taking classes across these 10 schools and colleges to investigate different academic disciplines. So to give you an example, we had a student that was looking at world building, both in literature and in video games. So what she was doing was taking history and literature and politics classes in our College of Arts and Science, game design courses in our Tisch School of the Arts, and bringing all of these different disciplines together to understand how do we create worlds in fiction, in literature, and in games. So you can even create a major that doesn't already exist and do something that is interdisciplinary in fashion. We also have our professional schools like our Myers College of Nursing, our School of Professional Studies, which allows students to study things like real estate. We have our Stern School of Business, our Tandon School of Engineering, which obviously has engineering programs, and the list goes on and on. Sal mentioned earlier that if you're interested in an artistic program at NYU, you do have to either submit a portfolio or go to an audition. Those artistic programs live in our Tisch School of the Arts and our Steinhardt School, and they are conservatory style, which means you're spending the majority of your time really focusing in on your artistic craft. So a lot of different options in terms of academics, but also a lot of support for being able to explore what you want your major to be. Now, a little bit about our campus location. So we do actually have 2 campuses in New York City. So for those of you who are not familiar with New York City, it is made up of 5 boroughs. The main borough is Manhattan, and you'll see up at the top an archway, that is Washington Square Park. That is one of our campuses in New York City. It's in Lower Manhattan, and that is where we have most of our academic programs. Now, like I said, our campus is open, so Washington Square Park is kind of like our unofficial college quad. It is a public park in New York City, but it really is the center of NYU's campus. It's in an area called Greenwich Village, which is very different than Times Square, if you've been to New York City before. It is very much a culturally rich area with a lot of arts and opportunities for, there's a lot of residential life and also shopping, so it feels a little bit different than some of those more high populated areas of the city. And then down at the bottom, we have our second campus location, which is in downtown Brooklyn, and that is home to our engineering programs as well as many of our arts programs. It is part of an area of Brooklyn called the Brooklyn Tech Triangle, which is a really high concentration of tech startups and companies. And also Brooklyn is a burgeoning art scene in New York City. So it's a really great place for our art students to be learning and studying. The 2 campuses are about 15 minutes apart, so they're pretty close to one another, and we have students going between the 2, but those 2 areas of the city really become part of the NYU experience. And now moving over to our campus in Abu Dhabi, there is probably one number that really sticks out to you here, and that is the size of the campus. It is much smaller than our campus in New York City. We have about 1,800 students at that campus. This campus opened in 2010, and very intentionally was going to be a globally diverse campus. So you see, even though it is 1,800 students, we actually have 120 countries represented within that student body. And that is very reflective of the city of Abu Dhabi itself, where about 80 to 90% of the population are actually expats. So it is a very global city, therefore a very global campus. And it's a really great fit for students who are interested in studying in the context of the Middle East. You are not required to take Arabic while you're there, although that is an option if you really want to immerse yourself a bit more in the culture and really thinking about the Middle East and its relation to the rest of the world. And so we do have about 25 different majors offered there, one which is called Arab Crossroads Studies, which is a really popular major for our students, kind of thinking about what I just said, the Middle East. So a lot of access to arts and culture in the same way that we were talking about in New York City. So even though it is in a big city, we do have more of a traditional style campus in Abu Dhabi. It is still open to the public, but looks a little bit more like those small consolidated campuses that you might see in the US or even here in Australia. So students have a lot of access to the city in Abu Dhabi as well as the other Emirates. And a lot of our classes, because we are very well positioned in the middle of the world at our campus in Abu Dhabi, do take that as an opportunity to travel and get that experiential learning. So we did have a class called Making Theater, where a few years ago, students actually went to India as part of that course to learn about the Indian tradition of theater, right? So those excursions that are built in so they can get that hands-on experience. And then finally, our campus in Shanghai. This one opened in 2013, so it's our newest of the degree granting campuses. You'll see that it is similar in size to our Abu Dhabi campus, about 1,800 students, but the student body looks very different. About 50% of the student body there are actually Chinese national students going through the Chinese education system, and the other half are international students from about 70 different countries around the world. So this campus was actually created in a partnership with the Chinese Ministry of Education. So really there is a focus on Chinese culture, history, language, and China's role in the world. So that plays a very large part in all of our academic programs throughout our campus in Shanghai. Students do not need to know Mandarin before going to our campus in Shanghai, but when they do graduate with fluency in the language. That is built into the curriculum. It's a very immersive experience. So you see all the majors and minors that we offer at Shanghai, very similar in terms of what we offer to our Abu Dhabi campus as well. And again, you really are bringing the region of the world into the conversation when you're studying these academic areas. What's interesting about our Shanghai campus is when students graduate, they actually get 2 degrees, one from NYU and one that's recognized by the Ministry of Education in China. So our students who are non-Chinese citizens can actually work in China immediately after graduating, which is a really unique experience for our international student population. And then you'll see here where we are in the city of Shanghai. We actually have a new campus that opened last month, and that campus took a lot of student and faculty and staff input into the types of spaces that students want. So it was really something that was community driven in being built. So you can see it's right by the Shanghai Botanical Gardens, not far from the financial district of Shanghai. Shanghai is one of the most connected cities in terms of the metro system, so very easy for our students to travel around to jobs, internships, and just experience the culture of the city itself. So those are our 3 degree campuses. One of those acts as your home base at NYU. That is where you spend the vast majority of your time, you earn your degree, but you do have access, as we talked about earlier, to our entire global network and studying away. So we want to make sure that our students have that global experience at the end of their time with us. Now, a question we always get is, what happens beyond NYU, right? And that's an important question to ask. So we do have a report that we release every single year for all 3 of our campuses. And it gives you statistics about what our students are doing after graduation, whether that's where they're working, where they're living, where they're going to graduate school, so you can understand where students are taking their degree. So you can go online and view those reports, but you see a few statistics here. So 93% of our students have at least one job or internship throughout their time at NYU. I mentioned this briefly earlier, but we do have a career development center on all 3 of our campuses to help students get those jobs and internships. And NYU is really intent on experiential learning. So we want students building up their CV while they're a student so they can A, explore the different pathways they have in their field, but B, be competitive in the market after graduating because they have these experiences. So our Career Development Center really helps them to find those opportunities, not only on their home campus, but around the globe as well. We have an app called NYU Handshake where students can search for and apply directly to jobs and internships around the entire world. Just to give you a sense of scope, on Handshake, we have about 22,000 opportunities every single year posted for New York City alone. So you can only imagine what that number looks like across the globe. I mentioned that I was an NYU student. I actually had 5 jobs and internships while I was a student at NYU. And I was a psychology major, not a business major, right? So it's possible for students across all different academic areas. And I found that that was incredibly helpful for me in understanding my different pathways within psychology. So I worked on a research team with one of my faculty members, and a lot of our students do that because NYU is a research institution, and we even have funding for students to do their own research as well. I worked in a hospital shadowing a psychologist. I worked for a reality TV show. I worked in the marketing department of Walt Disney Studios. And finally, I worked in the admissions office, and that's why I'm here talking to you all today. Became very passionate about psychology and education, but the ability to actually test out those different pathways and understand what my options were really critical in what happened after graduation. And we find that for many of our students. And you can see up here that 60% of our students actually secure a job before they graduate. So they're making those connections, they're networking while they're students, and are set up for a job after graduation. And then over 90% of our students across all of our campuses are either in a full-time job or enrolled in graduate school within 6 months of graduation. So our students at NYU are really prepared in a unique way, obviously academically and the foundation that they're getting from their faculty members in our academic programs, professionally from the experiences they're having outside of the classroom, but then also globally, right? We talked about how we live in this very interconnected world. Our students being able to study away, learning from students from around the globe, are really prepared to enter into that workspace. And that's something that really sets our students apart. So we're really proud of what our students are able to do with an NYU degree. So that is what we have to present to you today about the application process, about NYU. Hopefully you have a better understanding of both, and we would love to answer some of your questions. So we are going to have a mic that will be coming around the room and would love to know what you have questions about so we can further demystify the process about the US application system, but then also about NYU. So if you have a question, if you could just raise your hand, that would be helpful. Yeah, it can be about student life, it can be about academic programs. Yeah, we have a question here in the middle. Thank you for being a mic runner. I appreciate it.